This is the UK Financial Intelligence Unit podcast.
Hello and welcome to the latest UK Financial Intelligence Unit podcast. My name is David Maguire and I'm a senior officer with the UKFIU. In this edition we're looking at modern slavery and human trafficking, or MSHT, in relation to the SARs regime. Now, in spring 2020, the UKFIU published two guidance documents detailing red flag indicators of MSHT. Now, you may be asking yourselves, what do SARs, Suspicious Activity Reports, have to do with MSHT? Well, the answer is everything. Modern slavery, human trafficking, is a financially motivated crime that takes place both in the UK and globally, and SAR reporters are in a unique position to help combat this crime. In this podcast, we'll be hearing from Sian Turner and Richard Fell from the Modern Slavery Human Trafficking Unit and Denise Napper from the UKFIU. No active or sensitive operational work will be discussed. The podcasts are educational, offering guidance, and opinions expressed by panellists are independently theirs. MSHT is a significant threat to the UK and it brings horrendous harm to its victims. But what do the different terms mean? Well, human trafficking is the acquisition of people by improper means, such as force, fraud, deception, to exploit them. Smuggling is a mutually agreed service, usually involving transportation and/or fraudulent documents to enter a foreign country illegally. Once this exchange is complete, the person is free to make other choices. So if trafficking is a crime against a person, smuggling is a crime against the state. Sian, from your experience, what makes these victims so vulnerable? And what's driving this criminality?
If a person enters a country clandestinely or illegally, they're then vulnerable to be exploited by persons living within that state. So they could then become a victim of trafficking or exploitation once within that country. The vulnerability being that they shouldn't be there, they have no one to turn to, and should they turn to the authorities, the first thing that the authorities could realise is they're illegal into that country. And their vulnerability, or the fact they can't report offences against them, means that others are able to exploit them in a variety of criminal methods. So, for example, that could be county lines, it could be working in a factory making clothing, it could be selling DVDs on the street, it could be working in a brothel. So the way that we record statistics in this country around people that have been reported into the state of being exploited, and many of them do not report, is a system known as the National Referral Mechanism. And that system last year had 10,700 potential victims of exploitation reported to it. We believe that the figures are more in the region of 13,000 people. So the key driver for this type of crime is profit, financially driven by the criminals who want to make money. So, for example, organised immigration crime, we believe, is costing the UK at the moment in the region of £37 billion annually. And we would say the crime of human trafficking is costing the United Kingdom in the region of $4 billion annually. So the really horrible thing around the crime is the victims of the human trafficking and exploitation are always vulnerable, and they're vulnerable in many ways.
And what kind of employment are we likely to find victims placed in?
So the main sort of business areas that we would say are likely to hold persons of particular vulnerability would be the car wash sector. I think most people are familiar with that area of business. That is an area of vulnerability. Many restaurants will have staff behind the scenes that could be working in an exploitative environment. Nail bars is another one where we see particular cultures being exploited, often using very strong chemicals. Some of them are illegal in this country. I heard the other day around the fact that some dental acrylics were being used in nail bars. Traveller sites is another area where we've seen quite a lot of activity and law enforcement activity. This area focuses quite often on adult UK males being exploited, for example, in tarmacking business, doing driveways at private dwellings, a cash-rich business. Many types of factories that are out there. Another big area of activity are brothels, where we have a lot of activity where it's booked online through adult service websites, where persons of the community visit private dwellings, but also hotel rooms. Many of the girls there are being controlled by others. Farms, I've mentioned farms where we have many legitimate farms providing a very good service, treating their workers very well, but then we have other farms where conditions can be very, very brutal. We have another area of activity where we have young people being used in cannabis factories. So again, we would call that criminal exploitation, but it also comes into the world of labour exploitation. And a particular problem where we see Vietnamese persons being used to cultivate cannabis. So behind all of these areas of vulnerability are what we would call the push factors. What makes somebody end up in a situation that we would entitle slavery. And the really big push factors is poverty. Poverty drives the human spirit. Everybody wants to have a better existence. Everybody wants to better themselves. And, we have a number of people who come from Eastern Europe in extreme poverty. We have a number of people who come from countries where it's culturally normal to travel, especially as a youngster, and to earn what are known as remittances to improve your family that remain at home. And many cultures will put forward the child of the family who they think is the one who is most likely to achieve, and that person will be sent abroad with the hope that they will better the family through remittances. So all these things are push factors that people are encouraged or are tricked by others promising them a better life. And of course, when they get to the destination, the better life doesn't exist.
In terms of SARs then, what can reporters look for that could assist law enforcement and help safeguard victims?
So there are many things that we would call account indicators. So these could be all the things that you would look to submit a SAR. And SARs come into our agency really, really important as part of the jigsaw that we work to when we are researching a criminal and building up what we would term subject profile. So we will be looking at what we hold within our own organisation, what the local police force holds, but also what SARs have been submitted around the address or around identities. It's a really important part of our jigsaw. So in amongst that, everybody working in the financial sector knows about the indicators that they would be looking for, and they are extremely important to all of us. So is a bank account accessing adult service websites? It is a particular individual using a particular car firm for frequent travel, lots of short journeys to different addresses? Is a certain bank account booking lots of flights for different people? It can't be that person has that many female members in their family. Are these flights, single journeys with no return ticket? These are all indicators that something could be wrong. And if you see these indicators, we would ask you to consider SARs, and we would also ask you to consider contacting our unit where we can discuss, is there a potential crime taking place here that we can report to the local force? It's all about working in partnership to assist the vulnerable And from the criminal perspective, the one thing criminals don't like is having their money removed. A lot of criminals will expect to spend some time in prison, but they don't want to lose the money. And the money is the really powerful way of getting into these criminals and prosecuting them.
And Richard, if I can bring you in now on the same question, what should SAR reporters be looking out for?
In the first instance, I think suspicious activity reporters should be looking out for suspicious activity. The name is on the tin, so to speak. And modern slavery and human trafficking victims, particularly those that enter a high street branch, for example, showcase all of the vulnerabilities that we would expect to see in other criminal areas. So it may well be that an employee at the cashier desk of a particular high street bank may see physical ailments. It may be that that particular individual isn't wearing what we would call up-to-date clothing. Maybe they look a little bit shabby in their clothing that they're wearing. Maybe the individual doesn't speak English. Perhaps there's use of a translator or a family friend to assist them in the creation of a financial account, or with any amendments that they might wish to make on an existing account in that individual's name. That's the first thing, the kind of behavioural indicators that I think as a human we all see when someone is vulnerable, and that's the first port of call, and that's the most important thing that suspicious activity reporters can do. Secondly, I think there's a lot to be made around the transactional indicators. What does modern slavery and human trafficking look like through transactional activity? That's something that within the National Crime Agency we're continuing to assess. But I think we can safely make the case that, as I've mentioned before, modern slavery and human trafficking offences occur over a long period of time invariably, and therefore the frequency of transactions is large, but the actual value of those transactions is relatively small. So as opposed to some other criminal areas such as drugs and firearms trafficking, we see large quantities of cash or transactional activity taking place through accounts. With modern slavery and human trafficking, we often see small value but large frequency of transactional activity on those accounts. And therefore, suspicious activity reporters should be alive to the fact that there may not be large sums of money in one instance, but it's about the collective amount. How much money has been moved over a prolonged period of time, particularly to a small number of accounts that may suggest a controlling influence over that potential account.
Thanks both. Richard, I know that the NCA's Modern Slavery and Human Trafficking Unit coordinates a programme of intensified multi-agency activity under the banner of Project Aiden. Can you tell us a bit about what Project Aiden actually is?
Following the incorporation of the Modern Slavery Act in 2015, the Prime Minister at the time, Theresa May, launched what's called the Modern Slavery and Human Trafficking Task Force in November of 2016. At that meeting, the NCA was designated with the task of coordinating law enforcement response to modern slavery and human trafficking. And one of the ways in which we've done that over the last 4 years is through Project Aiden. Project Aiden is the multi-agency response to the modern slavery and human trafficking threat in the UK. It's led by the National Crime Agency's Modern Slavery and Human Trafficking Unit, but it involves the whole of UK policing, law enforcement agencies, government departments, non-governmental organisations, charities, and all other third-party institutions such as the financial sector. Over the last 4 years, Project Aiden has focused on a number of different areas of the modern slavery and human trafficking threat, from sexual exploitation to labour exploitation and instances of child trafficking and domestic servitude. Project Aiden thus far has received a wide-reaching response from across UK law enforcement and national partners, and as at the end of 2019 has resulted in over 770 arrests and led to the safeguarding of over 1,200 potential victims of modern slavery and human trafficking.
How crucial is SARs intelligence in all this?
More often than not, there is issues with victims coming forward and identifying themselves as victims, whether that's through the physical coercion or through the shame of not being identified and not wishing to be identified as a victim. So there's a two-pronged argument there as to why these people don't come forward or why they're not identified by law enforcement. And because of that, that makes the reporting through the financial institutions really key, because it gives us an insight, where traditional law enforcement methods don't apply.
Do you have any real-life case studies, sanitised obviously, that you can share with our listeners on just how crucial financial intelligence is to successful MSHT investigations?
That there is a tactical dividend to suspicious activity reporting, but there is also a strategic dividend to the suspicious activity reports that are submitted by the regulated sector. So whilst we know of a number of different suspicious activity reports that have directly assisted modern slavery and human trafficking investigations, all of the suspicious activity reports that relate to modern slavery and human trafficking have and will continue to be analysed by strategic analysts to assess the strategic dividend. So what can we learn from all of those suspicious activity reports that are modern slavery and human trafficking related, and how can we allow that to improve our understanding of the modern slavery and human trafficking threat here in the UK? That's what's really crucial about suspicious activity reporting as well. And it's something that is harder to identify and assess in terms of impact, but it's just as crucial.
Thanks, Richard. Now, if I can just bring in Denise Napper from the UKFIU's SARs Inquiries and Action Team. This team identifies potential victims of or suspected perpetrators of MSHT in SARs and disseminates them to law enforcement agencies to take urgent action. This is done by analysing keywords and SAR glossary codes, and the team reviews hundreds of SARs daily. Denise, what value do MSHT SARs have for law enforcement?
So modern slavery and human trafficking SARs received into the unit make a significant difference to society. They assist law enforcement in protecting vulnerable victims of the crime. They assist with law enforcement in preventing the activity and welcome the opportunity to pursue suspected offenders, perpetrators, and it also helps them prepare for resources they need within their forces and to respond and be able to react effectively to the information that we tell them is operationally urgent and they need to act on.
From a UKFIU perspective, what could reporters do that would assist you?
My team would benefit from reporters when submitting SARs to be very clear in the notes whether the subject of the SAR is a suspected offender, whether they're a suspected victim. We would also really benefit from the dates of the financial transactions and the money flows being made clear. The recency of the transactions allows both the UKFIU and law enforcement the opportunity to identify if it's a current offence that's being undertaken and how urgent their response has to be regarding it. And also the information that is within the SARs can be used in a variety of different ways. So if there is a passport number, if there is a mobile phone number, it can all be useful and assist law enforcement with activity that they undertake.
Thank you. Well, that about wraps it up for today's podcast. I'd like to thank Sian Turner, Richard Farrell and Denise Napper for their contributions. The UKFIU guides that I referenced earlier are available on the NCA website. That's nationalcrimeagency.gov.uk, and they outline red flag indicators intended to raise awareness and recognition of MSHT for reporters. If the indicators assist you in identifying suspicious behaviour in relation to money laundering, then please use the glossary code XXMSHTXX in your SAR. This helps analysis and the fast-tracking processes in place to protect the public. In parallel, if you suspect MSHT is taking place, then please contact the police. In an emergency, dial 999. For non-emergencies, dial 101. And additional advice can be sought from the Modern Slavery Helpline on 0800 0121 700. You can leave us feedback and suggestions for future topics at our email address, ukfiufeedback@nca.gov.uk, or via Twitter @NCA_UKFIU. So, until next time, I've been David Maguire, and this has been a UKFIU podcast.
UK Financial Intelligence Unit Podcast.